Everyone refused to save the hurt alien beast woman, except him. Liam's escape pod screamed through the decaying atmosphere, a flaming scar against the bruised purple sky. He isn't supposed to be here, not anywhere near the forbidden orbits, but his cargo runner had clipped an uncharted debris field, sending him plummeting towards the scarred, methane-rich surface of Xylos. He braced for impact, the pod shuddering violently. It hit, not ground, but something yielding, something vast and metallic groaning under the strain. He'd landed on one of the derelict orbital biodomes the Kalan were rumored to inhabit, or rather, abandon. He kicked open the hatch, gasping at the thick, cloying air that smelled of ozone and decay. Bioluminescent flora pulsed weakly in the gloom, casting long, distorted shadows. His survival kit was minimal. A med kit, a standard-issue energy pistol, a few ration packs, and a comm that sputtered static. No ship, no way out. He was stranded in a haunted house the size of a moon. He moved through corridors choked with alien vegetation, the silence pressing in, broken only by the distant groans of stressed metal and the drip of unseen moisture. That's when he heard it, a choked cry, a sound of pure raw agony that cut through the quiet. He moved towards it, gun raised, survival instincts screaming at him to turn back. But the sound, it was too human in its pain. He rounded a bend in the corridor, stepping into a wider atrium where the bioluminescent growth was brighter, revealing shattered viewports looking out onto the swirling purple gas giant below. And there she was, not human, not even close, physically. Tall, slender, her form encased in what looked like ceremonial plating, now damaged and sparking. Her skin, where visible, was covered in intricate shimmering patterns that pulsed with a faint, erratic blue light, like dying embers. One of her limbs was twisted at an unnatural angle, and a dark, viscous liquid seeped from a wound in her side, disrupting the elegant flow of her bioluminescence. She was beautiful in a terrifying, alien way, and she was clearly in agony. He lowered his weapon slowly. Her head snapped towards him, revealing eyes that glowed with an internal light, wary and filled with pain. She made a low, guttural sound, a warning. He took a tentative step closer. "Hey, easy," he said, his voice rough. "I'm not going to hurt you." She flinched as he approached, trying to push herself further into the overgrown wall. A desperate, injured animal. The blue light on her skin flared briefly, then dimmed, flickering like a failing circuit. It seemed tied to her pain, her fear. He knelt a few feet away, opening his medkit. "I have bandages? Antiseptic? It's not going to be fun, but it'll stop the bleeding." He gestured to his kit, then to her wound. She watched him, her chest rising and falling rapidly, the intricate light patterns on her skin flowing in chaotic waves. He didn't know her species, her culture, anything about her. But he knew pain when he saw it, and he couldn't just leave her. Everything in him, the part that still held on to his humanity despite the harshness of the galaxy, refused. He'd seen plenty of life forms left for dead, passed by, ignored. He wasn't going to be one of those people. He slowly reached out a hand, palm up, a universal gesture of peace. "Look," he said softly. "I'm just trying to help. You're hurt. Let me help." Her glowing eyes narrowed, calculating. The air between them felt thick with tension, a fragile bridge built on desperation and unexpected empathy. He waited, the silence stretching, the only sound his own breathing and the distant, mournful groans of the biodome. He saw the flicker of indecision in her eyes, the raw need battling deep-seated caution. Finally, with a painful exhale that caused her bioluminescence to dim further, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was a surrender born of agony, a dangerous gamble on a stranger from a different world. His heart hammered in his chest. He had just stepped into something far bigger and more dangerous than a crashed ship. Helping her was harder than he'd anticipated. Her body was alien, the injury deep, and his basic human medical supplies weren't designed for Kalan physiology. As he worked, carefully cleaning the wound with antiseptic that made her patterns writhe and dim in distress, he noticed details. Her skin was cool to the touch, smooth, almost like polished stone beneath the intricate, pulsing light. Her breathing hitched and seized with pain, and she made soft, keening sounds he instinctively felt were suppressed screams. Her arm was definitely broken, the bone visibly displaced beneath the skin, a gruesome sight even with the shifting light obscuring some of the detail. He couldn't fix that with his kit, but he could stabilize it. He used a stiff piece of plating salvage from her damaged armor and strips of cloth from his own clothes to create a makeshift splint. She endured it with a stoic silence that was more unnerving than her earlier cries, her glowing eyes fixed on him, unblinking. When he finished bandaging the side wound and splinting her arm, she looked exhausted. But the frantic, chaotic flow of her light patterns had settled slightly into a more sluggish, steady rhythm. She tried to speak, her voice a low, melodic series of clicks and resonant tones. He didn't understand. She gestured towards herself, then towards him, then towards the shattered viewport showing the gas giant. He pointed to himself, Liam. He then gestured to her, you. She paused, her luminous eyes studying him. Then slowly, clearly, she spoke a single word in a language that resonated deep in his bones, carrying a weight of history and sorrow. Lyra. Her voice was a deep, resonant hum overlaid with those strange clicks, hauntingly beautiful. He nodded. Lyra. Okay. He offered her a ration bar. She eyed it with suspicion, but her need for sustenance must have overridden her caution. She took it tentatively, examining the wrapper before figuring out how to open it. She ate slowly, deliberately. The biodome groaned again, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to echo through Lyra's very being. Her light patterns pulsed in response. What was that? He asked, though he knew she wouldn't understand. She looked towards the direction of the sound, her expression hardening. She pointed, then made a series of urgent, low sounds, gesturing for him to follow. Danger. She was telling him something was coming. He packed up his kit quickly. Okay, led the way. He was putting a hell of a lot of trust in an injured alien he'd just met, but his gut told him she knew what she was doing, knew the dangers of this place better than he did. She rose stiffly, favoring her injured side, her splinted arm held carefully. She moved with a surprising grace despite her injuries, her footfalls light on the overgrown metal floor. She led him through a labyrinth of corroded walkways and vine-choked chambers, her bioluminescence providing faint, ethereal light. She seemed to navigate by instinct, recognizing patterns in the decay he couldn't see. Periodically she would stop, press a hand to the metal wall, and her light patterns would flare, then dim. She was sensing something he couldn't perceive. The air would feel colder or vibrate subtly, and she would recoil, leading them in a different direction. They were being hunted. The sound he'd heard wasn't just the biodome settling, it was something moving within it, tracking them. The injured beast woman wasn't just a victim, she was prey, and by helping her, he'd become prey too. Their journey through the decaying biodome was a constant exercise in silent communication and shared tension. Lyra would press her hand against the bulkheads, her body tensing, the light on her skin shimmering rapidly as she felt the vibrations, the resonance of things moving through the structure. Then she would point, sometimes urgently, sometimes with quiet determination, leading them deeper into the complex, ruined heart of the station, away from the pursuing signatures she sensed. Liam stayed close behind, his energy pistol ready, though he knew it was likely useless against whatever powerful entity was tracking them. His reliance on her was absolute. His survival depended entirely on her ability to navigate this alien environment and evade their pursuers. He tried simple phrases, pointing at objects, attempting to learn her language or teach her fragments of his. Door, he'd say, tapping a rusted hatch. She'd respond with a melodic click and hum, and eventually he started associating sounds with things. She was a patient, if reserved, teacher. She taught him the Kalan word for water, a soft, flowing sound. For light, a sharp burst. For danger, a low, grating hum. He taught her walk, stop, hungry. Their shared vocabulary was rudimentary, built purely on necessity, but each exchanged word chipped away at the wall between them. They found temporary refuge in what looked like a large, circular chamber, perhaps a meeting hall or ceremonial space, now overgrown with luminous fungi that cast eerie, pulsating shadows. In the center was a raised platform, and walls covered in faded, intricate patterns mirroring those on Lyra's skin. As they rested, huddled in a corner, the air grew colder, the sense of pursuit stronger. Lyra's light patterns turned a deeper, more urgent shade of blue, contracting towards her core. She clutched her injured arm, her breathing shallow. He risked using a precious painkiller from his kit, crushing the tablet and mixing it with a few drops of water he'd rationed. He offered it to her. She hesitated, then drank, her luminous eyes searching his face. "This place," he whispered, looking around the decaying grandeur of the chamber. "It was important, wasn't it?" Lyra nodded slowly. She touched the patterns on the wall, then her own skin. She spoke, her voice a low, sorrowful resonance. A string of words he didn't know, but whose meaning was conveyed by the weight in her tone, the way her light patterns dimmed with grief. He understood she was talking about her people, about what this place represented, about loss. Then she pointed to her damaged arm, the wound in her side, and made a sound he now recognized as danger. She pointed away, towards the direction they had come, and made the danger sound again, but sharper, more intense. Then she pointed to herself, made a complex series of clicks and hums that sounded like a title or status, and finished with the danger sound, followed by a low, mournful resonance he couldn't place. He pieced it together. She was someone important. Her injuries and her presence here were tied to the danger, and they were hunting her. He leaned back against the wall, scrubbing a hand over his face. "Figures," he muttered. "Walked right into a galaxy-class mess." He looked at Lyra, her alien beauty stark against the ruin, her vulnerability heartbreaking. "So, Wonchu," he said, sighing. "And since I'm with you, they probably want me too." "Great." He tried a weak smile. "Least I'm not bored." She watched him, her expression unreadable. He wasn't sure if she understood his words, but she seemed to grasp the sentiment, the weary acceptance of a bad situation. The air hummed with a growing vibration. Lyra tensed, her patterns flickering violently. The hunters were very close now. They couldn't stay here. Lyra guided him out of the ceremonial chamber through a hidden passage concealed behind a section of the patterned wall. It was narrower, darker, forcing them close together as they moved through the suffocating passage. Her injured arm brushed against him, and she winced. A small, sharp sound. He instinctively reached out, not to touch, but a gesture of support. Her glowing eyes met his in the near darkness, and for a fleeting moment, the guardedness in them softened, replaced by something that looked like weary gratitude. They emerged into a service tunnel, a tangled mess of corroded pipes and sparking wires. The vibrations Lyra sensed were stronger here, the ominous resonance pulsing through the floor. They were directly above or below their pursuers. Lyra stopped abruptly, pressing her back against the cold metal. "Listen." Her light patterns shifted rapidly, a silent language of alarm and calculation. She pointed down the tunnel, then back the way they came, then made a gesture with her uninjured hand that indicated a trap. Something closing in. "Okay," Liam whispered, his heart pounding against his ribs. "What's the plan?" She didn't speak, but her movements were decisive. She pointed to a vertical access shaft nearby, then to herself, then made a sign of ascent. "Up." She wanted to go up. He nodded. It was a gamble, exposed in a shaft, but perhaps less predictable than the tunnels. The access shaft was a vertical climb through the biodome's decaying infrastructure. The handholds were treacherous, rusted and unstable. Lyra, injured as she was, climbed with surprising strength, her movements fluid and precise, relying on her lower limbs and uninjured arm. Liam followed below, providing support where he could, pushing her up from beneath, his muscles screaming with the effort. The whole structure seemed to vibrate around them, the resonance from their pursuers filling the shaft, a palpable sense of malignant focus. Lyra's light patterns were flashing with increasing frequency, a frantic, silent scream of detection. They knew she was here. They were coming up the shaft after them, or cutting them off above. Halfway up, Lyra paused, clinging to the ladder-like structure, her body rigid. She pressed her forehead against the cool metal, her bioluminescence flaring. She turned her head, her glowing eyes wide with a sudden, terrifying realization. She spoke, not just a word, but a short, urgent phrase in her language, punctuated by a low, desperate resonance that seemed to vibrate the air itself. He didn't understand the words, but the meaning was clear. "They're here," he breathed. Below them, the sound of alien footsteps, heavy and rhythmic, echoed up the shaft. Above them, a grating metallic sound indicated another access panel opening. Lyra looked from the opening above to the approaching sound below, then to Liam. Her light patterns intensified, pulsing with fierce energy, shifting from blue to a vibrant, burning gold. It was a terrifying, magnificent sight. She reached out her uninjured hand, cupping his face briefly, her touch cool but radiating intense heat, a silent farewell or a desperate plea. Then, with a surge of strength that seemed impossible given her injuries, she pushed herself upwards towards the upper opening, moving with astonishing speed. She wasn't trying to escape, she was drawing them after her, a sacrificial diversion. "Lyra, no," he yelled, but she was already climbing, her golden light a beacon in the dim shaft, attracting the attention of the figures now visible silhouetted in the opening above. He saw shapes, tall and imposing, clad in dark, smooth armor, their forms lacking the intricate light patterns of Lyra's people. Enforcers, the ones who saw her as a beast. He couldn't let her do it alone. Despite his fear, despite the sheer impossibility of fighting these things with a pistol, he started climbing faster, following her. He wouldn't abandon her. Not now, not after she had relied on him. He reached the opening just as the armored figures moved to engage Lyra. She faced them, injured but defiant, her golden light flaring brighter, pushing back against the shadows they cast. They attacked, their movements swift and brutal. He fired his pistol, the energy bolt harmlessly deflecting off the first enforcer's armor. Useless. He needed to do something else. Anything. As Liam scrambled out of the shaft, Lyra was fighting with a ferocity that belied her injuries. Her uninjured arm moved in blindingly fast strikes, deflecting blows from the enforcer's staffs. Her golden light pulsed, seeming to interfere with their movements, causing them to hesitate. But she was outnumbered, and her splinted arm hung uselessly, her side wound staining her plating darker. One of the enforcers landed a heavy blow, sending her staggering back. Her golden light flickered, threatening to extinguish. She was losing. Liam saw a console nearby, sparking and overgrown, part of the biodome's failing systems. He didn't know what it did, but it was a distraction, a chance. He rushed towards it, fumbling with the controls, hoping to trigger an alarm, seal a door, anything to disrupt the fight. As he worked, one of the enforcers turned towards him, seeing the new threat. It raised its staff, a weapon crackling with energy. Lyra saw it. With a guttural cry of pure rage and desperation, her light patterns flared one last, blinding time, and she lunged, tackling the enforcer away from Liam, sending them both tumbling towards the access shaft. "Lyra," he screamed. But they were gone, the sound of impact echoing from below. The remaining enforcers hesitated, looking down the shaft, then back at Liam. He was the lesser threat, but still a threat. They advanced on him. He braced himself, pistol raised, ready to fight and die. But then, from the shaft below, came a sudden, overwhelming surge of resonant energy. The biodome shuddered violently, metal groaning, the very air vibrating. The remaining enforcers staggered, their dark armor flickering as if overloaded. Lyra's golden light erupted from the shaft opening below. Not just light now, but a physical wave of energy that slammed into the enforcers, throwing them back against the walls. The resonance was deafening inside Liam's head, overwhelming his senses. He stumbled, clutching his temples. He saw Lyra emerge from the shaft, leaning heavily against the frame, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her injuries were still there, but her light patterns, they were no longer just gold. They were a vibrant, swirling tapestry of gold and a deep, earthy brown, interwoven and pulsing in perfect sync. It was breathtaking, terrifying. She looked at him, her luminous eyes filled with an intensity that stole his breath. She raised her uninjured hand, and the wave of resonance intensified, directed solely at the remaining enforcers, pushing them back until they crumpled against the far wall, incapacitated. Lyra sank to her knees, the intense light show on her skin dimming slightly, though the brown patterns remained interwoven with the gold. She was trembling, exhausted. Liam rushed to her side, kneeling beside her. Lyra, are you okay? He didn't know what had happened, what that surge of energy was, but it had saved them. She looked at him, her luminous eyes softer now, the raw power still humming beneath the surface. She raised her hand, hesitantly, and touched the back of his hand where it rested on her arm. As her fingers brushed his skin, a jolt went through him. He felt a sudden, intense warmth spread through his body, emanating from the contact point. On Lyra's skin, at the point of contact, his own skin seemed to faintly glow with a matching earthy brown light, momentarily mirroring her patterns. Her eyes widened fractionally, a look of profound shock and understanding passing over her face. She whispered a single word in her language, a word that resonated with the same deep hum as the energy surge. He didn't need a translator to understand the weight of it. Bond. She had said bond. It wasn't just a fight, it was a ritual that had somehow bound them together. The intense battle, the surge of energy, her touch, it had been emerging. His mind reeled. He had just crashed his ship, helped an alien, and somehow in the chaos of a fight, accidentally performed a sacred bonding ritual with her. His life had just taken a sharp left turn off the known map of the galaxy. The shared resonance lingered, a faint hum in the air, and deep within his bones. It wasn't just a feeling, it felt like an echo of another consciousness, Lyra's overlapping with his own. He could sense her exhaustion, the lingering pain of her injuries, and something else, a swirling mix of awe, confusion, and profound acceptance. Her light patterns, the interwoven gold and brown, pulsed steadily now, a constant reminder of the bizarre, powerful connection forged in the heat of battle. She looked at her hand where it still rested on his, then back at him, her luminous eyes searching his face for understanding. What was that? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. The light? The feeling? She closed her eyes for a moment, gathering her strength. When she opened them, intensity was back, but tempered with a strange tenderness. She spoke, her voice softer than before, the clicks and hums forming complex sentences. She gestured to herself, then to him, then to the interwoven patterns on her skin. She used the word bond again several times along with other words he hadn't heard, words that sounded like ancestor, resonance, complete. He started piecing it together, matching her gestures to the sounds, remembering snippets of stories about alien bonding rituals. You mean, we're linked? He asked, struggling to wrap his head around it. Because of that, he gestured vaguely towards the shaft. The incapacitated enforcer. Lyra nodded, a slow, solemn movement. She touched her chest, then his, then traced a line connecting them in the air. Her light patterns pulsed in affirmation. It was a ritual? He pressed. That energy surge, that wasn't just power, it was a bonding? Another nod. She explained more, using the few words he knew, supplementing with gestures and the expressive shifts in her light patterns. The villains, the enforcers, were from a faction who saw her, or the potential within her, as impure, a threat to their rigid order. The ritual she was meant for was different, but the battle, the shared desperation, the surge of ancestral resonance she'd tapped into protect him, it had completed a different kind of bond, one that was powerful, unexpected, and apparently irreversible. The interwoven gold and brown patterns on her skin, she indicated, were a manifestation of their combined resonance, her lineage's gold intertwined with him, with humanity represented by that strange, earthy brown light. The implications crashed down on him. He wasn't just stranded with an injured alien. He was bound to her soul deep by a magic he didn't understand, tied into a conflict between alien factions. His dry humor kicked in, a desperate attempt to process the absurdity. Right, okay. So, crashed my ship, got adopted by a glowing alien princess, and now we're apparently married by combat and space magic. Pretty standard Tuesday. Lyra watched him, her expression unreadable, perhaps trying to decipher his strange sounds and the odd inflection of his voice. She then grew serious, pointing towards the incapacitated enforcers, then making a sign of them waking up, regroup. They weren't safe. This bond, this resonance, It made them both targets. It was powerful, yes, but it also marked them. She rose stiffly, still favoring her side, but with a newfound strength emanating from her. She gestured deeper into the biodome, towards the central core, perhaps, or another path. They needed to move, to find a more secure refuge, or a way out of this decaying structure, together. The forced proximity had just become a permanent condition. He looked at her, at the strange, beautiful patterns on her skin, at the deep exhaustion in her glowing eyes, and felt a surge of something he couldn't name, protectiveness, resignation, and a reluctant sense of wonder. His isolated life had ended the moment he decided not to leave her to die. Lyra led the way, her movements still careful, but imbued with a quiet determination that hadn't been there before. The interwoven light patterns on her skin pulsed with a steady, vibrant energy that seemed to resonate with the biodome itself. He could still feel the echo of her presence in his mind, a soft hum beneath his own thoughts, a constant awareness of her physical state and emotional resonance. It was unnerving, intimate, and strangely comforting in the desolate silence of the derelict station. She seemed to navigate, not just by sight and sense, but by feeling the resonance lines within the structure, the paths least likely to be patrolled by the remaining enforcers. They found a small, self-contained habitat unit that seemed miraculously preserved, its atmospheric seals intact, its internal systems partially functional. The air inside was cleaner, warmer. There were rudimentary living quarters, a water recycler, and even a small, overgrown hydroponics bay. It was a sanctuary. Inside, away from the immediate threat, the full weight of their situation settled. Lyra examined her injuries more closely, her delicate fingers tracing the lines of her splinted arm and the bandaged wound. The new light patterns, the blend of gold and brown, were present across her entire body, a permanent change. She looked at them, then at Liam, a mixture of awe and sorrow in her eyes. She used their growing shared vocabulary to explain more about the bond. It wasn't just symbolic. It was a merging of life forces, a sharing of ancestral resonance. His decision to savor his innate human tenderness as she seemed to perceive it had resonated with a deep, ancient Kalan ritual, tied not to pure lineage, but to inherent life force compatibility, a forbidden path in her culture's current rigid state. The surge of power in the fight wasn't just her strength. It was a potential unlocked by the merging of their distinct resonances, a potential the council feared. The interwoven patterns were a bond mark, indelible and universally recognizable to her people. They were now, effectively, a single, complex being in the eyes of the Kalan, a merged resonance unit. So, Liam said slowly, sitting on a dusty cot, we're soulmates now, by alien law, 'cause I didn't leave you to die. He ran a hand through his hair. Galaxy has a really weird sense of humor. Lyra looked at him, her expression serious. She didn't understand the humor, but she understood the core of his statement. She nodded. Bond, she said, her voice soft, resonant. She reached out, hesitantly, and touched his hand again. The familiar warmth spread, and he felt that subtle resonance shift, felt her quiet emotion, relief, curiosity, perhaps even the beginnings of affection, overlaid with the deep weight of responsibility that came with the bond mark. He didn't pull away. Her touch was strange, alien, yet it felt profoundly right in a way nothing else ever had. He looked at the delicate, intricate structure of her hand, the way the gold and brown light patterns flowed beneath the surface of her skin, and felt a connection that went beyond words. He had saved her life, and in doing so, he had become inextricably bound to her fate, to her people's conflict. It was terrifying, yes, but also strangely exhilarating. He wasn't alone anymore, and neither was she. They spent the next few days in the sanctuary unit, a fragile bubble of peace within the decaying station. Liam helped Lyra with her injuries, changing bandages, carefully tending to her broken arm. She showed him how to prepare the strange, bioluminescent fungi from the hydroponics bay for food. They learned more of each other's languages, their conversations still halting, but growing richer. Lyra taught him about the Kalan homeworld, its history, the rigid hierarchy ruled by the Council of Resonance Purity, their fear of uncontrolled resonance, which her lineage had always embodied. She told him how her original bonding ritual was supposed to consolidate power, but she was exiled when an impurity was detected, perhaps a dormant trait that resonated with something outside their species. His arrival, his simple act of kindness, had accidentally completed the ancient, forbidden resonance bond. He told her about Earth, about humans, about the messy, chaotic, emotional nature of his species. He showed her pictures on his battered datapad, oceans, trees, cities, people laughing. She looked at them with quiet fascination, her light patterns shifting with curiosity and a touch of wonder. Their bond, that constant, subtle hum of shared resonance, deepened their understanding of each other, allowing them to feel the emotions behind the words, the intent behind the gestures. It was like having a constant, silent translator for the soul. One evening, as the purple gas giant swirled outside the viewport, Lyra sat beside him, her gaze fixed on his face. Her luminous eyes seemed to pierce right through him. She reached out and gently touched the patch of skin on his hand, where her touch had first caused his faint, earthy glow. "The bond mark," she said softly, her voice a melodic hum. "It is permanent. Our resonances are interwoven. You are Kalen now in a way my people fear, and I am marked by you. We cannot be undone." She looked vulnerable, apprehensive. He covered her hand with his touch steady. "I know," he said. Honestly, still trying to process the space magic part. He paused, looking at her. "But I don't want to be undone, Lyra. You saved my life in that shaft. And I didn't help you because of a ritual. I helped you because you were hurt, because it was the right thing to do. If that somehow ties me to you forever, then I guess I'm okay with that." It was an insane statement, objectively. His life was forfeit if they were caught. But looking at her, at the genuine emotion flickering in her glowing eyes, feeling the comforting weight of her resonance beside his, he meant it. A slow, hesitant smile touched Lyra's lips, a rare sight that transformed her alien beauty. Her light patterns flared, not with fear or pain, but with a warm, golden light that seemed to fill the small habitat. "Liam," she said, speaking his name with a resonance that made it sound like a sacred word. She leaned her head against his shoulder, a gesture of trust and affection that felt profound. He put his arm around her, being careful of her injury. They sat in comfortable silence, the shared resonance a soft melody between them. But the peace was fragile. Lyra sensed the shift first. Her body tensed, her light patterns hardening into sharp, angular lines. She pushed away from him, listening intently. "They are near," she whispered, her voice low and urgent. "The council," they sensed the completed bond mark. "It is a powerful resonance, different from what they expected. It draws them. Their sanctuary had been discovered. The villains, the council's enforcers, had followed the trail of the forbidden resonance. They couldn't stay here. They had to move, perhaps towards the core of the biodome, where Lyra believed an ancient, hidden escape route might exist. A path only accessible or known through the deep ancestral resonance, now unlocked by their bond. They left the sanctuary unit, plunging back into the decaying labyrinth of the biodome. The sense of purpose was immediate and intense, a palpable pressure that weighed on Liam's mind, filtered through the bond with Lyra. He could feel her fear, her determination, and a rising tide of protective energy that seemed to emanate from her very being. Their bond, forged in necessity, was now their strength, their only weapon against a powerful, unseen enemy who sought to control or destroy the resonance they now shared. Lyra moved with urgency, guiding him through unfamiliar sections of the biodome, places even more derelict and dangerous than where they had been. She seemed to follow not pathways, but lines of resonance, ghost trails of ancient Kalen energy that pulsed beneath the structural decay. They climbed through maintenance tunnels choked with hazardous gases, which Lyra seemed immune to, but he had to hold his breath through, rappelled down elevator shafts using makeshift ropes, and navigated vast silent chambers filled with dormant, humming machinery. The whole structure felt alive now, responding subtly to Lyra's presence, to their combined resonance. Doors that should have been sealed groaned open at her touch. Power conduits flickered back to life, casting momentary light on their path. Their bond was not just internal. It was interacting with the ancient Kalan technology of the biodome. Behind them, they heard sounds of pursuit, heavy footfalls, the distant thrum of energy weapons, and worst of all, a low, penetrating resonance frequency that Lyra indicated was the Council's tracking signal, honing in on their bond mark. They were close. They reached a massive central chamber, its ceiling lost in the gloom, dominated by a towering crystalline structure at its heart, pulsing with a faint internal light. It looked like the core of the biodome, or perhaps something much older, much more important. The core, Lyra breathed, her light patterns shimmering with reverence and trepidation. The heart of the oracle, she explained, her voice low. This structure was an ancient Kalan artifact, a repository of ancestral resonance, a link to their deepest past. It was said to contain a path, a way to transcend or escape, but only through a perfectly pure resonating bond. The Council controlled access, fearing its power. Lyra believed their unique forbidden bond might be the key. As they approached the crystalline structure, the air grew thick with energy. Lyra's interwoven light patterns pulsed with incredible intensity, mirroring the light within the crystal. Liam felt the resonance swell within him, a powerful, almost overwhelming force. He could feel Lyra's thoughts now, clear and sharp in his mind, not words, but pure concepts and emotions, anticipation, fear, hope, and a deep, unwavering connection to him. It was intimacy on a level he couldn't have imagined. The thrumming of the Council's tracking signal grew louder, closer. Figures in dark armor emerged from the shadows at the far end of the chamber, their energy weapons raised. They had been waiting. The trap was sprung. Lyra didn't hesitate. Liam, she projected into his mind, a pure resonance of his name. We must reach the oracle. The bond, it can open the way. She surged forward, pulling him with her, towards the towering crystal. The enforcers opened fire, energy bolts searing the air around them. Liam fired his pistol, still useless, but providing a distraction. They reached the base of the crystal. It hummed with power, the light within intensifying. Lyra placed her uninjured hand against its surface. Her light patterns flowed onto the crystal, spreading like liquid light, intertwining with its internal luminescence. Nothing happened. Lyra pressed harder, a tremor running through her body. She turned to Liam, her luminous eyes filled with desperate understanding. The bond required both of them, not just in resonance, but in touch, in union with the oracle. Path needed their combined, complete bond mark. The enforcers were closing in. There was no time. Lyra looked at him, a silent question in her eyes. He didn't fully understand, but he trusted her. He placed his hand beside hers on the cool, crystalline surface of the oracle. The moment his skin touched the crystal, the resonance exploded. His faint, earthy brown light patterns flared, merging with Lyra's gold and brown on the crystal's surface, creating a swirling vortex of light and energy. The crystal structure pulsed violently, emitting a deep, resonant hum that shook the entire biodome. He felt it then, the true depth of their bond, amplified by the oracle. It wasn't just resonance. It was a merging of senses, of memories, of being. He saw flashes of Lyra's past, ancient Kalan rituals, starfields viewed from this very biodome in its prime, moments of her exile, her pain, her loneliness. He felt her emotions with the intensity of his own, and she felt his the taste of rain, the sound of human music, the ache of isolation, the unexpected warmth of compassion that had driven to save her. Their consciousnesses brushed against each other, distinct yet interwoven. It was overwhelming, intoxicating, terrifyingly intimate. The crystal roared, a sound that was both auditory and felt deep in their bones. A section of the crystal structure shimmered, becoming transparent, revealing not solid wall, but a swirling, starry void, a portal. It was the escape route, but as the portal opened, the energy from the oracle, amplified by their bond, surged through them both. It was a physical sensation, intense and demanding. It felt like being simultaneously consumed and reborn. Lyra cried out, a sound of pain and ecstasy. Her light patterns flared brighter than ever before, the gold and brown swirling together on her skin, mirroring the portal. Liam felt a powerful primal urge surge through him, not just emotional, but deeply physical, resonating with Lyra's matching intensity. This wasn't just passage. It was the final physical culmination of their bond mark ritual, triggered by the oracle and the imminent threat. Their shared trauma, their forced proximity, their burgeoning feelings, the raw power of the oracle. It all converged in this one explosive moment. Their escape was intrinsically linked to their union. The resonance intensified, pushing them together against the oracle's surface. The enforcers were only yards away, but they were momentarily held back by the sheer power radiating from the crystal. Lyra looked at Liam, her eyes blazing with power and something else. Acceptance. Desire. She pressed against him, her unique alien body radiating heat and light, completing the circuit of power and ritual begun the moment he touched the crystal with her. He felt the smooth, cool texture of her skin beneath her damaged armor, felt the vibrant pulse of her light patterns against his own skin. The merging wasn't just energetic or telepathic, it was physical, profound, driven by an ancient biological imperative. Unlocked by the bond mark and the oracle's power, it was survival, intimacy, and destiny, all intertwined in a chaotic, powerful moment. The ritual, the merging, was brief but intense, overwhelming his senses, leaving him breathless and disoriented. When it subsided, the swirling portal in the crystal was stable, shimmering invitingly. The raw, demanding energy that had pulsed through them faded into a warm, steady glow that now permeated both their bodies. Lyra leaned against the crystal, trembling, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Her light patterns were still vibrant, the interwoven gold and brown shining with a newfound clarity and strength. The deep wound in her side seemed less urgent. Her broken arm no longer looked quite so grotesque. The energy of the bond mark, amplified by the oracle, had somehow accelerated her healing, reinforcing her form. She looked at Liam, her eyes soft but intense. The depth of their connection, laid bare by the oracle, was overwhelming. He could feel her vulnerability, her shock, her gratitude, and a profound sense of destiny that settled around them like a heavy cloak. The physical intimacy, born of extreme circumstance and alien ritual, hadn't been about pleasure in the human sense. Not primarily. It was about completion, activation, the final forging of a bond that was biological, energetic, and deeply spiritual. It had been a necessary function, dictated by the oracle, but the emotions stirred by it were undeniably real, undeniably personal. Lyra straightened, pushing off the crystal. She no longer seemed like the injured exile he had found. She was still Lyra, but something fundamental had shifted. She radiated authority, power, and a quiet confidence that came from embracing the very thing her people feared. "The bond mark is complete," she said, her voice stronger, resonating with the oracle's energy. "The oracle recognizes our resonance. The path is open." She gestured to the shimmering portal. Behind them, the enforcers were recovering, their forms stirring from where they had been thrown. The council's tracking signal was a blaring alarm in Liam's head now. They knew the dawn mark was complete, that the ancient forbidden resonance had been unlocked. They would never stop hunting them. Lyra looked at the portal, then back at the approaching enforcers, then at Liam. "This path, it leads elsewhere, far from here. A place known only to the oracle and those it deems worthy." She offered him her hand, the one with the gold and brown patterns swirling beneath the surface. "It is a new life, a dangerous one. But we face it, together." He took her hand, her touch was familiar now, the resonance between them a comforting constant. His brief, isolated life as a galactic nobody was over. He was bound to an alien heiress by fate, ritual, and the shared moment of intense power and vulnerability. They were fugitives, yes, hunted by a powerful faction, but they were also connected in a way few beings ever were, their lives and fates irrevocably untiable. He looked at the shimmering portal, then at Lyra's luminous face, seeing not an alien beast, but a partner, a survivor, something precious that he had saved, and who had in turn saved him, in ways he hadn't yet fully grasped. "Together," he echoed, his voice firm. It wasn't the life he'd planned, not by a long shot. It was insane, impossible, and probably suicidal. but it was theirs. With the sounds of their pursuers closing in, Lyra squeezed his hand, her light patterns flaring with resolute purpose, and together they stepped through the shimmering portal into the unknown. The Oracle's chamber was left silent, save for the groaning metal of the biodome and the frustrated cries of the arriving enforcers, left behind by the power of a forbidden bond and a human's unexpected kindness. The other side of the portal was not a starry void, but a calm, moonlit landscape under a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations. They stood on a vast open plain, the air cool and crisp. The portal shimmered behind them for a moment, then winked out of existence, sealing their path and hopefully cutting off their pursuers. Lyra sagged with exhaustion, the last of her adrenaline fading. Liam held her steady. Her light patterns were still vibrant, but softer, glowing with a steady internal warmth. The enhanced healing from the Oracle's energy was evident. Her broken arm, while not fully healed, was already mending at an impossible rate, the splint now more a precaution than a necessity. The wound on her side had closed, leaving only a faint, darker trace, where the bioluminescence was still reforming. They were on a new world, chosen by the Oracle, guided by their bond. A world unknown to the Council, safe for now. Lyra looked around, her eyes wide with wonder and relief. She spoke, her voice hushed. The Oracle's sanctuary. It is real. A place between worlds, connected only by the resonance flow. She turned to Liam, a profound gratitude in her luminous eyes. You saved me, and then through you the Oracle accepted me. Accepted. No other Kalen could have done this. Only you. He shrugged, a small, weary smile on his face. Just doing my part. He felt the low, steady hum of their bond, felt her emotions swirling beneath the surface. Awe, humility, affection, and the quiet, terrifying weight of responsibility. He had disrupted an ancient culture, unlocked forbidden powers, and gained an alien wife, all by refusing to walk away from someone in pain. They walked across the plain as dawn broke, the unfamiliar sun casting long shadows. Lyra, though still weak, moved with a fluid grace, her bond-marked patterns glowing softly in the growing light. She told him more about the Oracle's potential, not just an escape route, but a source of knowledge, perhaps even a link to other beings who understood or shared their unique resonance. Their journey wasn't over, it had just begun. They had to learn to understand their shared power, evade any other threats the Council might send, and forge a life together on this new, unknown world. Liam looked at Lyra, at the striking alien beauty of her form illuminated by the dawn, at the intricate patterns on her skin that now included a part of him. The initial fear and confusion had settled into something else, a quiet resolve, a sense of belonging he hadn't realized he was missing. He was a simple human survivalist who had stumbled into the heart of an alien mystery, but he had faced it with courage and compassion. And it had led him here, bound to this extraordinary alien woman, ready to face whatever came next, together. Their bond was strange, born of chaos and ritual, but it was also deeply real, rooted in the fundamental act of one life reaching out to save another. The beast woman, exiled and hunted, had been saved. And the man who saved her had found something he never knew he needed, a connection that transcended stars. Lyra stopped, looking back the way they had come, towards the invisible path through the cosmos that the Oracle had created. A sense of loss flickered through the bond, loss for her home, her past, the life that had been taken from her. Liam stepped beside her, taking her hand again. "Hey," he said softly. "New chap, right?" She turned to him, her luminous eyes meeting his. She didn't say anything, but her light patterns softened, flowing with a gentle warmth. She squeezed his hand, acknowledging the truth in his simple words. They had each other, and they had the future. Unwritten but faced together. It was